What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Final Word with MattyB here on the It's a Wrap Sports Network with your boy MattyB on the call on this beautiful Wednesday, October the 16th, 2024, and back again for the Wednesday night edition of the program. Rough night last night, double duty. Pulled the show at 10 o'clock, came back for the 1 a.m., or actually it was about 1:15, I guess, because they went to overtime with the Flyers post-game show. But here we are, feeling refreshed. Had to get up early this morning. Didn't get to bed till after 3 a.m. But then I actually had to get up early this morning and do some stuff. But you know what? Worked in a couple naps along the way. Back feeling good. Ready to have an early night tonight. Because we got no post-game tonight. So that's good, I guess. But we're back here, and we'll always be here. We're like a fungus, man. Or more specifically, I'm like a fungus. But tonight on the program, we're going to go inside the Flyers a little bit. That's right. 3 games into the season. We're going to talk about what this team is. What are some of the positives that we've seen so far through 3 games? What are some of the negatives that we've seen so far in 3 games? And what are some of the major concerns that you may have or that I may have through 3 games of the season? We're also going to get a little bit inside the NFL trade deadline as moves are starting to be made early this year. Early. Trade deadline not till the 5th of November, and yet we've already had 3, I guess, pretty impactful trades. The Eagles are not involved in any of them yet, and we're going to talk and discuss a little bit about what perhaps they might be doing at the trade deadline as this season is what this season seems to be at this particular moment in time. So we're going to get inside a little bit of the NFL trade deadline and what that might mean for the Eagles. We're going to do a little NLCS check-in because we got the Mets and Dodgers. Scene is now shifted to Queens. They are playing Game 3 as we speak. The ALCS is taking the night off as they get ready to shift their scene to Cleveland with the Guardians in a bind right now, down 2-0. But the Mets and Dodgers enter tonight's Game 3. Tied at 1 apiece. We'll check in on that game. We also have our day in Philadelphia sports history. A couple of nuggets of facts about today in Philadelphia sports history. So come along for the ride as, again, we build this journey, or we go on this journey together as we build this thing in flight. Remind everybody that this can be seen on the It's a Wrap Sports Network YouTube page. Link is below. If you are watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Can't do this without YouTube. And we're also streaming out on my own personal Facebook and my own personal Twitter, as we do have a show Facebook page, but just like everything else here on the network, it's new and we're still trying to build a fan base. Again, I'm not going to go into all the reasons why we're in the situation that we're in. We already have talked about that ad nauseum. So just help me out, build, link, or follow the Facebook page, like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and help me do something with my nights, man. I have to sit around here and talk to my wife, and that is unacceptable. So, help us out. But a lot to get into. I mean, it's kind of a quiet night in Philadelphia sports. Flyers are off. Sixers, I believe, are in action. Phillies, of course, not in action. Eagles are gearing up for their Week 7 matchup against the is it Week 7? Yeah, Week 7. Yeah, Week 7 matchup against the Giants. And, we're going to turn the page, obviously, and not talk about the Cleveland Browns anymore. And tomorrow, don't forget, it might be a light night for me tonight with only one show. But tomorrow, I'm going to be back here a lot. Tomorrow, we got our 6:30 Birds Blast with Kyle Quinn. We got the 10 o'clock show. And then God be praised, the final game of this heinous West Coast trip that the Flyers have started the season out with. We got the Kraken tomorrow night, post-game around 1 a.m., Lord, or around that time, as we will get things wrapped up here, as the Flyers will shift their scenes back home and head on back to Philadelphia. Phil checking in saying subscribe. Thank you, Phil. Absolutely. You got to subscribe. Cannot do this without you. So, again, a long night here. Or this is not a long night per se, but it's been a long week. It's been a long week. But let's get this thing rolling with what we do every week here on the show, and that is your day in Philadelphia sports history. Again, brought to you by the fine folks here over at It's a Wrap Sports Network. We go back to the ripe year of 1963, and I guess this is appropriate seeing how that the Sixers are gearing up to start their season here soon. But back on this day in 1963, the team formerly known as the Syracuse Nationals played their very first game in Philadelphia as the Philadelphia 76ers. So essentially tonight was the birth of the Philadelphia 76ers in Philadelphia in 1963. They were the Syracuse Nationals, and they could not keep going in the small market of Syracuse. The NBA was expanding and growing, and Syracuse couldn't keep up. So they moved to Philadelphia, replaced, of course, the Warriors that had moved to San Francisco a couple years earlier. And Philadelphia once again had a basketball team. And, of course, 2 years after the Sixers came here, Wilt Chamberlain returned to the Sixers from the Warriors, and which began a pretty good run for the Sixers through their early history. And it all began tonight on this day in 1963, the Sixers' very first game as the Philadelphia 76ers, once they relocated from Syracuse in 1963. And then I actually have another one. I have another factoid. I told you this might not have been a busy night in Philadelphia sports, but it was definitely a busy night in Philadelphia sports history. There's actually three of them, but I'm only going to go with two tonight. On this night in 1983, this is more of a somber note. On this night in 1983, the Phillies, their magical run of 1983, the Wheeze Kids year, came to an end on this day in 1983 when the Phillies lost in Game 5 to the Baltimore Orioles, losing the series 3-2, or 4-1. I'm sorry. Thus closing the door on what a lot of people thought at that time, it was at that time, the most productive era of Phillies baseball, 77 to 83. I remember going into the 83 season, a lot of people did not have much expectations of the Phillies. They thought that window was already closed coming out of 1982. The Phillies reloaded for one more year with the likes of Tony Perez and Joe Morgan, thus, acquiring the nickname the Wheeze Kids, a little play off the Whiz Kids of the Phillies of yesteryear. And they actually shocked the world and made another run. Won the NL East, won the NLCS, and returned to the World Series, but ran up against the Baltimore Orioles, driven by, Jim Palmer, Eddie Murray, young Cal Ripken Jr., and it wasn't to be, as the Phillies would fall in 5 to the Orioles, and tonight was Game 5, and that would be the end of the Phillies season, and of course also the end of that era, because it would be another 10 years before the Phillies would return to the NLCS, and of course that was the magical season of 1993. So Sixers start play in Philadelphia in 1963 on this day, and the Phillies lose in Game 5 of the 83 World Series on this day as well. So there are your moments in Philadelphia sports history here on the It's a Wrap Sports Network. Brought to you by me, because we don't have any sponsors here. But yeah, so again, one moment that I remember very vividly, which was the 83 situation, and another moment which, of course, I don't have much memory of because I wasn't around 1963. So, but yeah, and again, it seems that all these moments have something to do with losing, doesn't it? It's kind of amazing. But let's get into the show tonight. I'm going to lead off with the Flyers. It's poignant. It's appropriate. It's the freshest thing in my mind because I just did a post-game show less than 24 hours ago. The Flyers 1-1-1 now to start the very early 2024-2025 season. And we failed to bring you a Clear the Ice season preview show, which we talked about. But again, because of the situation with how everything kind of went down there at the end, there just didn't seem to be any time for it. So we never really got into sitting down and kind of painting the picture of what we thought the Philadelphia Flyers were going to be this season. We've kind of hinted it, kind of talked a little bit about it But we're off and running now. And what I've seen through 3 games, first and foremost, it's tough. I mean, I honestly don't know how they drew the straw of starting the season out on a, 4-game road trip and a Western Canadian / West Coast trip with games in Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, and then Seattle before finally finishing things up tomorrow night and then coming home to start their home schedule on Saturday. That's a tall order to ask anybody to start any season. You know, I mean, that's not easy. And the fact that they are 1-1-1 now through those first 3 games against some heady competition. I mean, you're talking about the Pacific Division, defending Pacific Division champion Vancouver Canucks, the defending Western Conference champion Edmonton Orioles. Said it again, Edmonton Oilers, and the Calgary Flames, who are no slouches in their own right. The Flyers find themselves 1-1-1. And I'm not necessarily going to sit here and say burn the boats after 3 games. And there are some things there are some issues with this team. There are some concerns with this team, but those concerns were known coming out of camp. And those concerns are nothing that we are not going to break new ground tonight in discussing those concerns with the Flyers through 3 games. And I'll get right into it. Obviously, in year 2 of a rebuild, which again, this is year 2. I think a lot of people are starting to lose sight of that because of all the hype around Matt V. Michkov and all the excitement around him. But this is still year 2 of a rebuild. The team is still lacking certain pillars of strength on a hockey team, and that is a true number 1 centerman. They don't have that yet. Obviously, the story about, we'll get to Jet Lachenko in a second, but we came into this season without a proven number 1 center. Sean Couturier through 3 games this season. I mean, is it safe to say at this point he is there for his mentorship? He is there for his NHL experience. He is there for his leadership. I don't see much of an offensive game from him at this point yet. Again, 3 games in, I understand. And 2 years, or I don't know how much longer we can use the excuse of the injury, because this is his 2nd season back. But Sean Couturier is obviously not consistently working his way into the offense right now. And again, I cite all this, or I preface all this by saying it's 3 games in, and I'm not necessarily throwing anybody overboard at this particular moment in time, because the Flyers have had an interesting start to their season on the offensive side of things, and we'll get into that in a second. But this team does lack a true number 1 centerman. And until that area is addressed, until that need is fulfilled, the Flyers are going to be what they are. And I think, based on what we've seen over 3 games, they're a fun team to watch. They're a fast team. They're a young team. They're an energetic team. They're a team that's absolutely working their way towards an identity. They're not quite there yet, because I don't really know what this team is. I mean, you can kind of scratch an identity out a little bit, maybe a 45% solution to an identity. They're fast. They're transitional. They're explosive. They're looking for the big play. That's an identity. But yet they lack some of the key components for that. But they do have Michkov, who, 3 points through 3 games, 2 goals last night. He had an assist against Vancouver the other night. Obviously, the advertisement of Michkov was correct, and he's got a ceiling that's going to be outstanding. And watching him kind of mature into himself as an NHL player over the course of the next X amount of years is going to be a fun watch. And most definitely, will he be a pivotal piece to whatever this becomes. And he will be part of a face of a franchise for hopefully a return to the Stanley Cup after 50 some odd years in between our last Stanley Cups championships, that is. So that is a great thing. Jet Lachenko, the 18-year-old first-round draft pick, who a lot of it, and listen, let's face it, NHL experts across the board were surprised as hell that Lachenko got drafted in the first round. They were doubly surprised that he went in the top 15, which the Flyers took him at 13, and me being included in one of them. I didn't think that Lachenko, obviously he does fit a mold of a quick young centerman with a lot of distributive assets. He plays fast. He's got a great passing game. His offensive shot game is still kind of a work in progress, even at the major Canadian junior level. But he's got world-class speed. He doesn't seem to be kind of overtaken by the moment too much, even in this early part of the season. The Flyers shocked the world by putting him on the opening day roster, providing him the 9-game, 10-game, 9-game tryout, essentially, to see if he's going to work out before they have to make a decision whether to send him back to Guelph or keep him with the Flyers. And now we are 2 games into that audition, as he didn't play in the back-to-back against Calgary the other night. And now the questions are going to start coming up, and they're starting to gain a little steam right now, is what do you do with them? Last night he was a pivotal role. He was a pivotal part in the Bobby Brink goal, causing a lot of confusion as he went to the net, as young good centermen should do, go for that net. And he was instrumental in Bobby Brink getting that gift going off of the Edmonton defender's stick. Hasn't cracked the score sheet yet. Maybe he won't in the next 10 games, or maybe he will. Has been victimized a little bit with his defensive play. We saw him get victimized in Vancouver for kind of taking a play off or puck watching, making a very lazy turn, allowing his man or his responsibility, which was to cover the front of the net, to go unvacated, and the offensive player sneaking in behind him for a goal opportunity. He's made other gaffes, nothing major, but something, learning process as he's figuring all this stuff out. But as we get closer to the mark here, the question is obviously coming up about what do you do? Where would he best be served? Would he best be served in back in Guelph in juniors with another year of dominating at that level, add another year of experience or a year of feeling good about himself? Or would he be better served just staying here? He is the youngest Flyer in history to ever start an opening night, replacing Dainius Zubrus, who did it in 96. And if you remember Zubrus' career, he was a highly touted prospect coming out. And, the Flyers took a aggressive approach to his career. And he spent about 20 years in the league. He had a productive, successful career, but he never quite hit the potential that a lot of people thought he could hit. Now, whether was that because the Flyers mishandled that and allowed him not, rushed him along, or maybe he just wasn't ever going to be that type of player in the NHL, for whatever reason. We can debate that all night long. But as far as Jetlachenko goes, here's the problem that I'm having, or here's the conflict that dwells within me about Jetlachenko. In a year or two of a rebuild, should it be a no-brainer that he's in juniors? It should be, right? It's a no-brainer in a year or two of a rebuild. We're not winning a Stanley Cup this year. And if he does stay, that's 1 year off of his contract. 1 year off of his ELC. You burn a year. How does that help the team in 2024, 2025? I think Danny Briere even said it himself. He's more worried about Jetlachenko 5 years from now, not 5 games from now. But yet, that was, of course, before John Tortorella, I think, really pushed the issue of him making the team. So there's that side of it. There's the side of, why are you such a hurry? Things are going to be here. Give the player an opportunity to develop as much as he can, and then we bring him along. Other side that I coin is, listen, in major junior hockey in Canada, he's been a pretty heavy force for the Guelph Storm over the last couple seasons. The only thing that people are having a problem with, it's not the competition level, because if he goes back down the Guelph, he'll dominate again. What really does that do for the player? Honestly, what does that do for the player? The big thing everybody's wrapped around is the age, 18. Is it too young to be playing in the National Hockey League? Well, I can cite you about 100 examples of 18-year-olds breaking into the league and having Hall of Fame careers. Now, I'm not in any way, shape, or form comparing Jetlachenko to Wayne Gretzky or Sidney Crosby or Patrick Kane or Connor Bedard. I'm not comparing him to them. But it has happened that an 18-year-old can come into the league and succeed. I believe Jack Hughes did it too. Hell, well, now celebrating is about 20. So it's not completely out of left field that this is happening. I personally think for 2 reasons he should stay. Reason 1, as I mentioned at the top, we don't have a true number 1 centerman. Now, is he a true number 1 centerman on October 16th, 2024? Not in any sense of the word. Is he a playmaker? Is he someone that's going to create a lot of ooh, ah? Yeah, he is. Is he something we need here? Both for creating offense that we so desperately need and helping maybe bridge the gap between himself and Michkov. Maybe they can start developing together, because is the end state at one point a line that features both Luchenko and Michkov on it? So you start that relationship building now. And of course, it provides the offense for the team. Again, year 2 of a rebuild with expectations that people are really afraid to talk about. And I believe that it's playoffs for me. If they don't make the playoffs this year, I don't know. There's something really bad went down. They should make the playoffs. They were a playoff team last year, and now they've added additional offensive weaponry. And then I'm actually going to speak about why I think they might not make the playoffs here in a second. But it's character-based. Tortorella has said over and over again, Keith Jones has said over and over again, Danny B has said over and over again that he does not seem overtaken by this moment. He does not seem, starstruck about going up against Connor McDavid last night. He doesn't seem starstruck about playing in the National Hockey League at 18. And just think about it this way. If they send him back down, and he goes back down the major juniors, right? Starts dominating. At what point does he stand on the ice and think to himself, God damn it, man, 2 weeks ago, I was going head-to-head with Connor McDavid. Now I'm riding a bus around the OHL, playing against 16-year-olds. I mean, what's that going to do to the kid's psyche? So I say keep him for just the selfish reason that he's part of the Flyers' future. The future is now in a lot of aspects for this team. The future is now for Michkov. And if he's passed the test up to this point, if he made it through training camp, he's made it through the preseason with the stuff not being too big for him. He survived his first 2 NHL games with it seemingly not too big for him. He looks confident out there. He looks big out there. He doesn't look like he's trying to hide out there. As I said yesterday on the post game, we were breaking down that goal that Bobby Brink scored, and right from the very beginning, Luchenko knew what he had to do. He went right to the net to cause that havoc and disrupt potentially the goalie, and it worked. He didn't try to hide from that moment. He went right to it, and it assisted on a goal, uncredited assist, of course, but it assisted on the Brink goal, which was crucial at that time. The Flyers went up 3-2. So I say keep him here. I say leave him here in Philadelphia. I say let him figure it out and let him begin to grow into the potential player that he can be and not worry about the other stuff. I would like to think that Tortorella, Danny B, and Keith Jones have already done the homework on his character to actually get him to this point to begin with. So that's what I'm saying. Luchenko stays. Future is now. The other aspect of this team, of course, is defense. One of the things heading into the season of Flyers, I don't think we're concerned about with personnel, concerned about with depth, concerned about with anything was the progression of their defensive core over the last couple seasons, and it has been amazing to see. We went from a team that a few years back didn't have anything in the cupboard when it came to blue liners to a team that where our cup is now overflowing with blue liners. And it's great to see. Now, of course, they are all at their own individual development points within the system or within the organization. Some are here, some are verging to be here, some are kind of figuring their way through the A, and then a couple of them are down in the coast figuring that out. But there's no shortage of potential blue line candidates for the Flyers in 24-25. So what makes what I saw last night from one of the players that's considered, who was playing, I believe, in his 500th game of his career last night. Was that what it was? 200, 500? What was Sanheim? Sanheim hit a milestone last night in his career. That was one of the worst games I've ever seen Travis Sanheim play in his career as a Flyer. We highlighted multiple miscues that led directly to goal-scoring opportunities for the Edmonton Oilers, to include the final game, or the final play in overtime, where Travis Sanheim was channeling his inner Sidney Crosby, attempting a breakaway to beat Connor McDavid, by the way. He was chasing him to try to score the game-winning goal. Of course, he lost control of the puck, wiped out in the corner. McDavid picks the puck, goes the other way, coast to coast, and then leads to the Draisaitl game-winning goal in overtime. That was just the icing on the cake of Travis Sanheim's very ineffective night last night. We talked about two other issues, where his attempt to try to stick handle the puck out of his own zone in the corner, which led to a turnover, which then led to a scoring opportunity, which then led to a goal. We talked about him not being in the right position, losing control, and losing, I think it was Brown behind the net. Or that was maybe the same play. But there was another play where he lost his man and enabled an Edmonton player to walk right in. So I think we did the math last night, and 3 of the 4 goals Edmonton scored were directly relatable or directly attributed to Travis Sanheim's poor play. I was never a big Travis Sanheim fan, and I certainly wasn't a big fan when he signed that contract a couple years back. And I really, really prayed to God during the dark days before Danny B, the last years of Chuck Fletcher. I was praying to God that they could swing a move to get him out of here. Every new year brings new hope and confidence that the Flyers can finally move on from him. But watching Travis Sanheim, who they're considering a top-line pairing defensively, makes me cringe. It physically makes me ill. I just have no confidence in his ability. He'll give you like 5 really good games and then 4 criminally bad games and cost you wins. So with all the great potential defensive players we have, let them kind of fly, man. Do something with Travis. Get rid of him, man. Send him somewhere else. He's got an injury now. Do something different, because watching him play physically makes me ill. Excuse me. And it's one of the bad news stories of a very promising young defensive core. Now let's move on to the netminders. And of course, this was a situation or a part of the rebuild that was not kind of on the bingo card to start the season, or I should say to start last season. The situation with Carter Hart was not in anybody's wheelhouse. I have a tendency to believe that the Flyers knew more about the impending situation than they were letting on, obviously, for obvious reasons. And that's what I think spurred them to draft those 2 goalies, Bjornsson and Zarajan, in back-to-back rounds in the 23 draft. I think they had inside knowledge to make them go goalie heavy in the early rounds of that draft that year because of what the impending situation might be. And then, of course, the Kovalsov situation, where they brought him in September of last year, signed him to his ELC, immediately loaned him back to the KHL. It made no sense of why they were going to sign him at that particular moment in time and then just send him back to the KHL. Why not just let him play in the KHL until he was ready to sign here and then go from there? But there was obvious reasons why the Flyers wanted to protect themselves by potentially bringing in another goalie into the fray if something were to happen with Carter Hart. Now, of course it did, and we're left with Sam Ersson and Ivan Fedotov. And Ersson, through the first 2 games, has looked very good. We talked about some of his shortcomings last night, his rebound discipline, his rebound control has been a problem. It's been a problem. It was a problem last year. It's been a problem so far this season. He's got to get that under control. You never want to give out fat, juicy rebounds, and Urson has had a tendency to do that. And the Flyers defensively in front of him have not really. There's been some massive breakdowns in front of him that the Flyers have paid for, and Urson has paid for as well. But overall, I am very happy with the play of Sam Urson through 2 games. Whether or not he can keep it up through the next 70 is completely unknown at this time. We saw it didn't work last year. Ivan Fedotov came in for the game against Calgary and looked a little bit overmatched. The big gawky 6'12" frame of his, whatever he's 6'8", 6'7", whatever he is, kind of looked a little flaily out there. He looked gangly. He looked uncertain, unsure of himself. But 4 games into his NHL career, that was his 5th, whatever it was. Let's let that roll. And potentially, if Kovasov, if that whole thing works out and he doesn't get sent back to the KHL, because now there's a potential that at the end of the month they're going to review the situation and maybe lend him back to the KHL. If the Flyers can make a potential decision about Fedotov in the next 15 days, and maybe not send Kovasov back, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But the goaltending situation is a pretty wild card for the Flyers this season. It could work out well. It could work out amazingly. It could not work out at all, or it could be a disaster based on the unknowns of all the unknowns that this team has currently in between the pipes. But through 3 games, it's been serviceable. It hasn't been great. As I mentioned, Urson's had moments of extreme confidence, extreme competence. And he's also had moments where the defense has let him out to dry, and he's paid for it too. But I'm okay with what Urson's had, or worse, or what Urson's done so far this season. Fedotov, a little bit lesser of a body of work, 1 game, and it didn't look too well, especially down the stretch against Calgary the other night. But the goaltending situation is pretty much what it is. The Flyers didn't have the money to go out and spend on a top free agent. They probably didn't have the wherewithal to go do it too, based on the positioning of the rebuild that they're in. And turning to some of the younger players that they have in the system that they've been developing over the last couple of years is a no-brainer. I mean, they got a plethora of young goalies who are unproven. Whether or not Urson and Fedotov are the answers, we'll have to find out. And the only way to find out is let them play. So right now, I guess just with everything with this team, it's pretty much of an unknown when it comes to the goaltending situation. Now, through 3 games, there's been a couple things that have kind of reared its ugly head to me about this team. And honestly, I did not see this coming at all. So through 3 games, the Flyers scored 9 goals. 9 goals through 3 games. They've scored 4 on the power play, and they've scored 1 shorthanded. So that's 5. So far through 3 games, the Flyers have scored 4 5-on-5 goals. When did this team become the special teams dependent? When did we become a power play dependent team? Where did this come from? A season a year ago where they were god awful on the power play, historically awful on the power play, 12%, 12.2, whatever it was, to a team that now is apparently living and dying by the power play. 4 goals, 4 for 15, 26.6% on the power play. To start the season, they potted 1 shorthanded goal so far. When did this happen? And how concerned are you with it? Unfortunately, in the flow of a hockey game, you can't determine whether or not it's going to be penalty laden, or you're going to take a lot of penalties, or the other team's going to take a lot of penalties. It just happens. You just have to kind of go with it. But some of the poor 5-on-5 play, I guess you could call it, or not as good 5-on-5 play, is based purely from the fact that they haven't done it much, or they haven't done it as much as they've been either shorthanded or on the power play due to the situations of the game and the game flow. So looking at the power play, I look at it with nothing but optimism. I said this last night on the program, 4 for 15 through 3 games. I will take that any day of the week. Based on what we've endured over the last couple of years with this power play, it has been a breath of fresh air to see them be so competent on the power play. And not only that, they are working the pucks around. They are finding the open shot. They are being creative on the power play. The Michkov influence is evident on the power play. His first 2 goals of his career were on the power play themselves last night. I don't know when the last time the Flyers scored 2 power plays in one game. I'd have to go back and look. Maybe I should have done that before the show tonight, but you get my point. The shorthanded stuff, last year was one of the strengths of the team as well. 16 shorthanded goals, led the National Hockey League, and now they got 1 already to start this season. So I'm not going to rag or bag on the power play or the special teams as a general rule here. I would like to see a little bit more competent 5-on-5 play. I'd like to see a little bit more offensive flow 5-on-5, but sometimes you just don't get that because of the game flow. And I'm sure we will get plenty of that as we move through the season. So a weird situation when it comes to the Flyer power play to start the season. 4 for 15 for the year. And they've also given up 12 goals, which, of course, we talked about this last night, too. That's way too many. Whether or not you're going to attribute the goaltending situation with Fedotov giving up the 6 the other night or the 5 and the 1 open empty netter, or you want to talk about some of the defensive lapses in front of Urson that have led to a lot of the goals against him. Whatever you want to attribute to, or if you want to attribute to bad goaltending, it's whatever it is, it's still too many. 12 goals in a game, or 12 goals through 3 games is too many. The other stat that is glaring to me, there's 2 more stats I want to go over. We talked about the shorthanded, we talked about the power play, but we talked about, let's talk about takeaways, giveaways. It's a really underappreciated stat in hockey. Does it tell a story? Yeah, it does. Does it tell the whole story? No, it doesn't. But 17 takeaways the Flyers have had through their first 3 games. That means they're taking the puck away in the offensive zone or in the other team's zone. And that's an average of 5.6 a game so far through 3 games. Now, last season, to give some context, the Flyers averaged 6 takeaways a game for a total of 494 through the season. So kind of on par for what they were doing last year. They've been opportunistic in their own zone. They've been pretty chippy. Their forecheck has been actually really good to start the season. I think it's been better this season, or to start this season, than it was last season. But on the other side of this, the Flyers have also been victimized with giveaways this year. 37 of them for the first 3 games. That's 12.3 a game. That's in quite contrast to what the Flyers were last year when they only gave up about 5.6 giveaways a game. Can you attribute that to the early season? Yeah. Can you attribute that to a lot of times being on the power play or on the penalty kill? Yeah, you can attribute to the imbalanced 5-on-5. You can. Can you also attribute it to some of the poor decision making inside their own zone? Absolutely. We watched it last night. Travis Sanheim trying to stick handle up the sideboards when he could have just thrown it up against the boards to try to bank it out. What did that create? It created a turnover or a giveaway. So, there's a bunch of factors that go into the giveaways. And as I said, does it tell the whole story? No, but does it tell a story? Yeah. And 12.3 giveaways a game is not a way to live the National Hockey League. That stat's going to come behind and burn you in the ass at this level. That 5.6 giveaway average that they had last year, 100% on board with that. But through 3 games, it has not been very encouraging to watch the Flyers try to not give the puck away in their own offensive zone. So, and the last final stat let's talk about is the moniker of the Flyers. Part of the team's identity is their blocked shots. 59 of them through 3 games for a 19.6 average a game. Averaging 19.6 blocked shots a game. Last season, I believe it was, 18 for the season? Let's take a look at that. Last season, they finished the season averaging 18.6. So, again, on par for what they did last year. This is a team that's not afraid to get in front of a shot. And we're seeing it again. So, another encouraging stat. The Flyers also began the season with 2 players on IR or IL. The Unicorn, Ryan Ellis, who, yes, one more year. Hopefully this is it. And Nick Seeler, who started the season with a lower body injury, an injury he suffered at the end of the preseason. So currently, right now, the Flyers started the season with $8.95 million of their contract money on IR, which, yeah, I'll take that. 2.7 of Sealers and 6 and change from Ryan Ellis, the golden unicorn of the Philadelphia Flyers, the man who's more elusive than Bob Denby. So there you have it. So far 1-1-1. The West Coast trip ends Thursday night in Seattle, where the Flyers will battle the Kraken. I would imagine Sam Ersson will get the nod and probably get the nod on Saturday, or maybe if Fedotov gets the nod, so that you know you have a well-rested Ersson for the home opener. We'll wait and see tomorrow what Tortorella does there. Lutsenko should play tomorrow. It's not a back-to-back, and honestly, I think he needs to play back-to-backs because that's part of the NHL life, is playing back-to-back games. We'll wait and see more about what Lutsenko and what his future is with the Flyers moving forward into the next 8-9 games. And then, of course, MattyB Michkov and Michkov Mania running wild. How many Michkov jerseys will be in attendance on Saturday against Vancouver? What's the over-under there? I say let's put the over-under at 100. And what do you say, over 100 or under 100? MattyB Michkov jerseys in attendance at the Wells Fargo on Saturday for the home opener. Love to see if anybody's there in attendance, keeping track of that. But yeah, it's it's great the Flyers are back. 1-1-1, as I said. Would have liked to have that game last night. Really wanted that game last night. The Flyers, it was theirs to lose, and they did. They lost it. But all signs so far encouraging for year 2 of the rebuild. And yeah, we'll get things moving through it. Let's now head over and check in on the NLCS here as we're getting a little bit late into the night. Top of the 8th now. 4-0 Dodgers over the Mets. So it looks like the Dodgers might be on their way to wrestling back that home field advantage by winning Game 3, which would then make them have to, at the very least bit, go back to L.A. if they can't win another game. So the Dodgers are up 4-0 against the Mets in the top of the 8th in Game 3 of the NLCS. Series tied 1-1, but it looks like the Dodgers are on the verge of taking the series lead in that best of 7. Remember, again, the It's a Wrap Sports Network here on the YouTube channel, my YouTube channel, or the network's YouTube channel, my network. Make sure you like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. Like and subscribe on all of our social media outlets. The links are all in the thing below. If you're watching this on YouTube, they're down there. And I think if you're watching it anywhere, they're somewhere listed in the area. So make sure you go ahead and like and subscribe on all of our platforms. As we are, what do I got? 21 YouTube subscribers. I can't get to 1,000 before I get to 100. I can't get to 100 until I get to 30. So let's go. Come on. Clock is ticking, folks. I got to get paid, man. I got to get paid. This is hard work, but yeah, we're making it happen, right? We're starting over from scratch, and it's tough. Yeah, I ain't gonna lie. It's tough. It's tough going back down a couple pegs and then having to rise back up. But like the mighty Phoenix, I shall rise again and be bigger and stronger, as we got some things brewing here in the works. And again, we got the Fightins final. We got Clear the Ice. We got this show. We got Birds Blast with Kyle Quinn. And we got another show that is brewing that's in the developmental phase right now. So hopefully more about that coming up here very soon. It features a familiar face. I'll put that out there. It features a familiar face who followed me over from EOP, who's now part of this network, working with me here on the network. Yeah, I mean, do I got to say his name? You've seen him already, and there's only 2 of us, so he's the other guy, not me. But yeah, we're gonna hopefully work on something like that with Sal. Sal's looking at maybe starting his own show, so We're working on that, so we'll more to follow as we move forward. But you can see Sal on Saturday as he'll be hosting Clear the Ice on this network. I got Clear the Ice tomorrow. All right, let's pause now and let's switch topics because it's time to talk some football and some trade deadline stuff as we get ready for a interesting situation here. We are literally almost 3 weeks away from the trade deadline, still about 3 weeks away, and we have three major trades to talk about. Of course, Amari Cooper going from Buffalo to Cleveland, Devontae Adams going from the Raiders to the Jets, and Cam Akers going from the Texans to the Vikings. Which pretty, marquee names here on the move. There's still some marquee names left out there. And we talked about this on the show last night. Some of the more intriguing names, DeAndre Hopkins, what is his future with the Tennessee Titans? Trayvon Burks, what is his future with the Tennessee Titans? These are, of course, Trayvon Burks has got some Eagle past in him. He was the draft pick that the Eagles sent to the Titans for A.J. Brown. Back in 2020, was that 1? Yeah, 21. So with the Titans really kind of going nowhere, they're 1-4 right now. Are the Titans sellers here, or do they want to empty the cupboards for Will Levis? Not give him any viable wide receivers to throw to. Try to maybe restock some of their draft capital. We'll see where they go with that, but I wouldn't be surprised to see DeAndre Hopkins, obviously with a bigger name. A little bit more cachet around him. He might get moved. How about Andre Sisco, the safety of the Jacksonville Jaguars? Again, Jaguars 1-5. Potential end of an era down there. Doug Peterson could be on his way out. Do the Jags kind of look to reload with draft picks again and try this again? There's a couple other players you can talk about that. Travis Etienne, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, Cam Robinson, Trevon Walker. I mean, that's a team that could be potentially picked clean at the trade deadline and really has some interesting players to help out some teams to include the Eagles. So what is the future of Andre Sisco? You got Devontae Johnson with the Panthers, another wide receiver, could help out somewhere else. And then the biggest name that I cannot believe is being floated around, Cooper Kupp. Yeah, Cooper Kupp being shopped around potentially as the Rams are kind of struggling a little bit. Do the Rams become sellers here and try not to completely bottom out, but sort of level off and then load up on some draft picks moving forward? Is Cooper Kupp potentially on the move this trade deadline season? Greg Newsome from the Browns, young, explosive cornerback, would probably fit real nice here in Philadelphia. What is his potential future with Cleveland? We've already seen Amari Cooper get dealt. Is he next to go? Emmanuel Ogbath from the Dolphins, an outside linebacker. Again, a potential trade trip for Howie and the Eagles. Tua's got the concussion. What kind of season with a banged up Tua with yet another concussion do the Dolphins have? Ogbath, he turns 31 here in November. So could he potentially be on the move? Again, the Eagles could be looking at him. Josh Uche, the wide receiver, not the wide receiver, but the will linebacker from the Patriots. Again, an older player. Drake May, the Drake May era has begun in New England. New England needs draft pieces. They need to build a team around Drake May. Is this a potential trade deadline target for the Eagles? He's a will linebacker. We need help on defense. So there's just a few names that are out there. There's just a few players that the Eagles could target. A couple other players that look like that could be moved as well. DeAndre Hopkins is probably one of the bigger names that I've heard kind of floated around out there. What's Tennessee's future right now? It's nothing, and they should get younger. And does Howie Roseman, though, with all this said, does Howie Roseman have the draft capital to even compete in a trade deadline situation to pull in an impactful player? I'm not talking about a Joseph Linville or a Namaka Suh. I'm not talking about players like that, but a guy like like Newsom, who could come in here, who's got some tread on his tires, who's actually in the prime of his career, who could give us a future potentially as a cornerback. Do the Eagles have the draft capital to pull off a move like that? Or is it going to be status quo, like a Linville Joseph or a Sue type of move for Howie this year? We talked about this last night as well. The Eagles have 7 picks heading into next year's draft. A first, a second, a third, a fourth, and 3/5. Not what you would call mega draft capital to start the season. Now, there's compensation picks that are going to happen as we get closer to the draft, but they're not going to be first-round picks, and they're not going to be second-round picks. So do the Eagles kind of try to maybe move multiple 5s for a player, 5 and a 3, 2 5s and a 3? I mean, does Howie Roseman overpay? What are the Eagles going to do at the draft? November 5th is the draft. Or not the draft, the trade deadline. And what part are the Eagles going to play in that trade deadline this year? Inquiring minds want to know. So, all right. Again, kind of a quiet night here in the Philadelphia sports scene. Let's finish things up here with the NHL. Let's take a look around the league tonight. Games that are currently ongoing, there's not too many. We'll talk about the games that have gone final. Only 4 games on the slate tonight, 5 games on the slate tonight. It is 3-1, the Sabres over the Penguins. I'm sorry, 6-5, Penguins over the Sabres in overtime. It was 6-2, Maple Leafs over the Kings. I watched that game a little bit. And currently in the second period, it is 2-1 Boston over the Avs out there in Colorado. And one more last check in on the NLCS. Now it is 7-0 Dodgers heading into the bottom of the 8th inning. It looks like that bad boy is going to get tied up at 1, or it looks like the Dodgers are going to go up 2-1 on that. Send the Mets sort of into a very pivotal game 4 tomorrow night in Queens, as the Mets do not want to get down 3-1 to the Dodgers in that team. So looks like the Dodgers are on their way to victory. Talked a little bit about the trade deadline, November 5th, Tuesday, in the NFL. We also mentioned a little bit of a 3-game check-in, state of the Flyers. Where are your concerns, or where my concerns were, and how this team's kind of started off the season. Not an easy task to ask a team to begin the season on a 5-game or 4-game Western Canadian / West Coast trip to start off a major season. Went over some potential trade targets for the Eagles. Talked a little bit about the trades that already happened. And again, stayed away from the Phillies tonight. Definitely want to stay away from the Phillies a little bit. Eagles are preparing now for the Giants. Tomorrow here on the Birds Blast with Kyle Quinn. Kyle will be on and we'll talk some Eagles, Giants. Big day tomorrow on the network. 3 shows, all featuring me, as we get ready to wrap up our broadcasting week for the final word. Tomorrow night's our last show for the week. And we got post-game coverage. We got the Birds Blast tomorrow. And then we got post-game Flyers and Canucks over the weekend. And then I'll be back on Sunday night, of course, with the final word, as we will obviously be talking Eagles-Giants and what happened on Sunday. So staying busy on the network. Again, please like and subscribe the It's a Wrap Sports Network on the YouTube channel, on all of our social media platforms. And you guys have a great rest of your night, and enjoy your tomorrow. We'll talk again real soon. Good night.